Welcome back to the Stop the Violence podcast. If you have noticed, I sang the intro a bit less enthusiastically this time, and that's because our intro topic is really tragic and sad, and it's going to be hard to talk about. But as always, whether you are a vegan, not a vegan activist, or an anti-vegan, which means a person who's against the idea of being kind to animals, you are welcome to this podcast. And thank you for returning listeners. I really appreciate the support because I do put a lot of hard work into this project. So today's episode is going to be all about water footprint, which is kind of how it sounds. It's kind of like carbon footprint, but it's the amount of water that we use with our daily lifestyle and how we can reduce our water footprint. And of course, I'm going to talk about the water footprint of not being vegan, of eating animal products. And we will talk about a website where you can take a quiz, and if you answer the questions honestly, you can get a good assessment of around what your water footprint is. And I'll share with you what my boyfriend's and mine ended up being, like each of us. And I'll also let you know why we should care about water footprint. Okay, so this past Sunday on April 11th, 2021, a young 20-year-old black man named Daunte Wright was fatally shot by a police officer. And it happened nearby where the Derek Chauvin trial, the man who murdered George Floyd, is happening. So that's also pretty wild. If you've been listening, you know that I am not one who just blindly trusts the media or the news. In fact, I don't even watch the media or the news. I found out about this a couple days after it happened through my mom's friend because I just don't consume news and I don't always trust it. I think there's a lot of false reporting and stuff. So what I am going to comment on is what I saw in the body cam video footage because the footage doesn't lie, and I've watched it a few times and I find it really disturbing. So the video footage, if you haven't seen it or haven't emotionally been able to see it, is from the body cam footage of the police officer who killed Daunte. Her name is Kim Potter, and the news and everyone says that she has been an officer for 26 years, so she is a veteran, and she should know what she's doing. And it is also said that she trains other officers, and it has also been said that she actually was training someone during the event itself. And if you want more details into like her and details surrounding it, Sean King has a good podcast called The Breakdown that I just started getting into recently. But anyway, back to the video footage itself. It is Kim Potter's body cam footage, and at first it shows a car and one of the other two police officers there at the passenger door speaking to Daunte, who's still in the car, and he tells him to step out, and he begins to arrest him and put handcuffs on his back. Then the officer handcuffing him or attempting to handcuff him says something about don't do that. I'm not really sure. It's kind of hard to hear. And at which point Kim intervenes and makes contact with him. And after that point, Daunte, there's a scuffle, and Daunte quickly gets into the car to try to drive away, presumably. He gets back into the car, and then Kim shouts, "I'll tase you, I'll tase you," and she has her gun out for a full 5 seconds, they're saying. I didn't count it myself, but everyone is saying it's a full 5 seconds, and it's in full view of the body cam footage of her holding it for 5 whole seconds, and she shouts taser, taser several times, and then she shoots him in the chest, and then says, "I shot him," in a very shocked and surprised, this was a mistake kind of tone. And immediately after that, he drives off. And the video ends with her saying, "I shot him," to the other officers, and then the video ends. And then apparently, from what they're saying, he drove and then crashed into a vehicle and died. And they're saying that the friend that was in the passenger seat had FaceTimed his mom and showed her, and that's the last time she saw her son. And I also forgot to mention that he was on the phone with his mom during this whole time of being pulled over. And yeah, he also leaves behind a child who looks to be about 1 or 2 years old. According to news articles, Kim has started her trial over a Zoom call meeting, and she's facing a possible 10 years in prison and I believe second-degree manslaughter. And the big issue with this is that people are really concerned and confused on how a 26-year-long veteran officer confused a taser with her gun when, for one thing, this was my first thought when my mom told me, like, oh, Robert said this happened. My first thought and reaction was, aren't the taser and the gun on, like, different parts of the belt? Like, that was my thought and reaction before even seeing the video and before even knowing anything else. But yeah, and the officer confirmed this. The chief, in his statement, he said they keep their gun on the right side or the dominant side, and they keep their taser on the left side, and there's a reason for this. And so it would have been like this for 26 years, so it's kind of strange that she wouldn't be oriented toward this habitually over having it be this way for 26 years. And furthermore, a gun's apparently a lot heavier feeling in your hand. And then another thing is that also apparently the taser is bright yellow while the gun is black. And I would add that from where she's holding it, from what it looks like in the body cam footage, it should have been at least in her peripheral vision, if not fully in her vision. And given the fact that she held it for 5 seconds, it just is really sketchy that she's saying she thought it was a taser. I'm not really sure, but it's sketchy. And to me, 10 years does not sound like a very long time at all. I mean, even if this 100% totally was a freak accident, people still go to jail when they accidentally kill someone for like longer than 10 years all the time, don't they? I mean, I'm not really sure, but I feel like they do. And if it wasn't an accident, then obviously 10 years is way too short. That just doesn't sit too well with me. It's also really ridiculous that she was allowed to resign, and I believe that means that she keeps her pension. I'm not really sure, but in my opinion, if you're being charged for possible murder or manslaughter or whatever, you shouldn't be allowed to resign and save your reputation like that. I think that's ridiculous. Now, I didn't stay in the comment sections too long, but on one of the videos, I think it was on YouTube, the comment section, as per usual, even though it still shocks me every time, was full of a lot of comments of victim blaming, where people were saying, sad, but it wouldn't have happened if he didn't resist arrest. And that is just so frustrating, and that inspired me to write out this long thing that I wrote out, and I thought I might read it. So here's what I wrote. If you have the opinion that he, quote, wouldn't have been killed if he just didn't resist arrest, end quote, I want you to know that's called victim blaming. Victim blaming is when the victim of a killing, sexual assault, abuse, etc. is blamed for what happened to them instead of the actual perpetrator who did the actual harm. It's the same logic as saying, quote, she was asking for it by dressing like that, end quote, after a woman is raped. If you don't see an issue with saying these things, perhaps think of how ridiculous it would be to say, quote, That person wouldn't have been hit by a car if they weren't walking in the crosswalk, end quote. Because in so many of these tragedies, the victim's only fault is being in the same vicinity as a perpetrator. And of course, that is no fault at all. Victim blaming is siding with abusers / killers / rapists, etc., and allowing their behavior to continue. Even if you have this opinion, it's not a fact, as Black people are killed all the time without resisting, and you do not know what would have happened if he hadn't resisted for certain. Then please keep it to yourself and apply empathy, perhaps asking yourself how you would feel if this happened to your loved one. And consider if this callous and ignorant comment is necessary to share when a family is grieving. Imagine how you would feel if you were trying to grieve and someone victim blamed your loved one for being killed by someone else. Resisting arrest or driving away after being pulled over is not a sentence to be killed. The cops already had a way to track him down, did they not? So for the safety of all, wouldn't it have been more wise and reflect proper training to just let him drive off when he was already back into the driver's seat? Or arrest him further away from his driver's seat's door? Wasn't he unarmed and trying to drive away, not trying to harm the cops? Why would a police officer want to use even a taser instead of de-escalating the situation, or backing off and then following his car and trying to stop him again, or use some other method to track him down and bring him to a station? Again, put aside your negative bias against BLM and apply empathy to objectively consider how you would feel if this happened to your loved one. And again, if you still have the victim blaming opinion, have the human decency to keep it to yourself. I know that people say whatever they want behind their screens, but would you honestly say it to his mother's face, to his grandmother's face, to his child? So yeah, that is what I wrote about this. Honestly, when that other officer starts saying, don't do that or stop doing that, to me, it just looks like he's not even moving. I don't know if he was just like stiffening his arms or something. I'm not really sure, but it's not as if he was harming or laying a hand on the officer. Like, I don't understand. For the several seconds that he was already sitting in the car, not trying to make any contact with the cops before he was shot, I have no reason to believe any of the cops were fearing for their life. All they had to do was take literally one step back and just let him drive off. Because at that point, if you don't just let him go, you're trying to stop him for your own ego. I'm sorry, but there's no other reason. It doesn't make logical sense. This situation there was no need for a taser. No one's life was in danger. People run away all the time. Mass murderous shooters run away all the time after they've literally killed and shot people. And they get taken and arrested without a scratch. Or like the King Soopers shooter did recently with one shot to the leg. So if that's how officers can treat murderous, dangerous people who are actually harming others, I don't understand why they can't use that same thing on innocent, unarmed Black people who are doing minor things, giving a counterfeit bill to a convenience store, trying to run away from an arrest. I mean, how many times have we seen videos of all kinds of people running away from trying to be arrested? That's no reason to be injured. Even if she genuinely thought it was her taser, which is very sketch, but let's just say that she genuinely thought it was her taser, that is still excessive force and completely unnecessary, and just, that's a bunch of bullshit. Now, if you want to keep up on this case as well as the trial of Derek Chauvin, the guy who murdered George Floyd, I honestly still have not brought myself to watch the video of George Floyd because I've heard about how it is, and I just haven't done it, and I know I need to do that to, help strengthen my passion for getting more involved with this kind of activism. But for more info on that and all kinds of other cases, again, visit Sean King's podcast, The Breakdown. As far as I know, he's a well-known, reputable activist, and like many strong, powerful activists, there's, campaigns out to slander his name and everything, but as far as I can tell, he's legit and trustworthy. Now, I find it necessary to play a clip of Dante's mother speaking about what happened, because these are real people, these are human beings, and these are real family members grieving.
I want to talk a little bit about the day that I got the phone call from my son 2 days ago at 1:47 was the worst day of my life. He called and said he just got pulled over by the police. And then he said that, I said, well, why did you get pulled over? And he said, because I had air fresheners hanging in the rearview mirror. I said, okay, we'll take them down. He said he also, the police officers were asking about insurance. And I said, okay, when the police officer comes back to the window, put him on the phone and I can give him all of our insurance information. A second goes by and I hear the police officer come back up to the window and ask Dante to get out of the car. Dante asked for what? Police officer said, because I'll explain to you when you get out of the car. He said, am I in trouble? He said, we'll explain all that when you step out of the car. Dante, and then they asked him to put the phone down. Dante put the phone down. I heard some scruffling. He got out of the car and I could hear the police officers and scruffling with him.
Take your time. We're with you.
We love you, son. Then I heard the police officer ask them to hang up the phone. They hung up the phone. 3 or 4 seconds went by. I tried calling it back to back to back because I didn't know what was going on. And I never imagined this is what was going to happen. I just thought maybe he was being arrested. And then when I called back, the girl that he had in the car answered the phone. And it was on a FaceTime. And she said, she was crying and screaming, and she said that they shot him. And she pointed the phone towards the driver's seat, and my son was laying there, unresponsive.
My Lord.
That was the last time that I seen my son. That's the last time I heard from my son, and I have had no explanation since then.
We with you, Miss Katie.
The last time I seen Dante was when I had dropped my son off with his grandma, and I didn't know that was going to be the last time that I was going to see him. And I just feel like that's so wrong because now my son, he don't have a dad. His dad didn't get to see him for his second birthday or for any of his birthdays. And I'm just so messed up about it because, I feel like they stole my son's dad from him.
I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I thought somebody was playing a joke on me. It hurt me to my heart. Dante was a beautiful child. He might not have been an angel, but he was our angel. Our angel.
He belonged to us.
He belonged to us. Tell him, Grandma. And he's gonna be missed.
Yeah, that sucks. I mean, I don't even know what he was getting handcuffed in the first place for. I don't... Who gets handcuffed during a traffic stop when they're trying to give you the insurance information? I don't even know what caused that part of it. And to clarify, the last woman was his grandmother, and the second woman was the mother of his son, and of course the first woman was his mother. And when she said on the phone, it was a FaceTime call, if that's confusing. I just hope that the people who are anti-BLM for who knows what reason, I mean, you can be against rioting and destroying property, but still support the notion that Black Lives Matter and the notion that justice needs to be served. So I don't understand why people take out this notion of valuing inanimate objects and property more than Black lives so far, to where they're willing to make, as I said in the thing that I wrote, these ridiculous comments. And I hope that they consider, like, really, could you say it to these women's faces? Like, people are such fucking cowards, how they spread hate and bullying over the internet. It's out of control. Victim blaming needs to end. Let's hope that justice is served to that fucker Derek Chauvin who murdered George Floyd. I mean, it should be a slam dunk, I think. We'll see what happens. It's fucking clear as day with that one. Clear as day. Oh my god, he could have got off his neck so much sooner than he did. He ignored a crowd of like 15 people shouting at him that he was killing him, offering to check his pulse. There's video footage of him before it happened, being completely peaceful and giving a woman a hug in the convenience store right before it happened. I mean, even if he was high, he wasn't hurting anybody, and that doesn't matter. And it's just such obvious cold-blooded murder and purposefulness with that case. It should be just an easy decision. But yeah, I wanted to dedicate my whole intro topic to that. And with that being said, let's try and kind of segue into the water footprint topic. So I set out to research about how much water animals in animal agriculture use, and I made sure that I didn't use any vegan sources, and I went straight to the farmers themselves and their organizations and whatnot. So, according to beef.unl.edu, water requirements depend on weight, stage of production, such as lactation, and temperature. All of these increase water intake, so how much water cattle will drink every single day. And they say it ranges from 3 to 30 gallons per day. Consumption will range from 1 gallon per 100 pounds of body weight during cold weather to nearly 2 gallons per 100 pounds of body weight during hot weather. Lactating cows require nearly twice as much water compared to non-lactating cows. And when they give that range from 3 to 30, that's quite a range, right? Well, 3 is just the number of a baby calf, what they would drink every day. So consider it more close to 30 for all the cattle who aren't babies. And to give context to that, 1 gallon per 100 pounds or 2 gallons per 100 pounds during hot weather, the average slaughter weight of a beef cow is about 1,379 pounds, according to the USDA, which is the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And mature Holstein cattle, which are the dairy cows, weigh around 1,500 pounds, according to HolsteinUSA.com and the Holstein Association of the USA. And that other info about how much cattle drink per day is from Dr. Rick Risby, professor of animal science, associate dean, Nebraska Extension. So basically here, for simple math, the 1,500 pound average of a dairy cow is going to be drinking 1 gallon per 100 pounds, which means 15 gallons a day in cold weather, and then she's going to be drinking 30 gallons a day, because 15 times 2 is 30 during hot weather, as well as the number of gallons goes up when they are lactating. So that's obviously a fuck ton of gallons of water per day for each cow, and when you multiply that by the billions of cattle that there are, that is a lot of water being used every single day that could be used to give to humans who need drinking water or for other purposes that we need. I mean, there's places where there's droughts, there's places like Flint, Michigan, where they don't even have safe drinking water. So that's just a ridiculous thing to prioritize. So for pigs, according to the National Pork Board Swine Care Handbook of 2003, the gallons per day that pigs drink vary from age, and it says that nursery pigs, which very interesting that they use that word, because when you think of nursery, you think of a baby in a crib and being cared after, but in reality, these piglets are smacked on the concrete and bludgeoned to death if they are not healthy, or if they're runts. They are smashed by their mothers who roll over in the farrowing crate. So very interesting to call that a nursery. But for the piglets, they drink 0.7 to 1 gallons per day. For the growers, they drink 2 to 3 gallons per day. For the finishers, which are 100 to 250 pounds, they drink 3 to 5 gallons per day. For the non-pregnant ones, they drink 3 gallons per day. For the gestating sows, it's 3 to 6 gallons per day. For the lactating sows, it's 3 to 7 gallons per day. And for the boars, it is 5 gallons per day. So moving on to turkeys, and bear with me because this graph was kind of weird the way it's set up, but it's in liters per 1,000 birds per day. And so it goes by turkey age. So at age 1 to 7 weeks, it's going to be 88 to 327 liters per liters per 1,000 birds per day in the cold weather, and then up to 448 liters per 1,000 birds per day in the hot weather. And the next age range, 8 to 14 weeks, that goes up to 403 to 737 liters per 1,000 birds per day for cold weather, and then 508 to 1,063 liters per 1,000 birds per day in the hot weather. And then at age 15 to 21 weeks, it goes up to 747 to 795 liters per 1,000 birds per day in the cold weather, to 1,077 to 1,139 liters per 1,000 birds per day in hot weather. And the thing to remember with these numbers is that even though they drink obviously a lot less water than cattle, there's thousands of birds per shed, and there's a lot more birds, especially when you talk about poultry. So for broiler chickens, it follows the same type of graph. It's in liters per 1,000 birds per day, and it goes by age. So age 1 to 4 weeks in cold weather requires 50 to 260, and in hot weather, it's 50 to 415. And then age 5 to 8 weeks, 345 to 470 in cold weather, and 550 to 770 liters per 1,000 birds per day in hot weather. And it doesn't go any farther up than that because broiler chickens are killed very young. So the typical seasonal use for the winter, fall, and spring is 280 liters per 1,000 birds per day. And for summer, it's 450 liters per 1,000 birds per day. So almost twice as much. And now, I'm not good at math, so I didn't try to do any equations, but to hopefully give you an idea of how much water this is, you should know that in the United States alone, so not even around the whole world, but in the US alone, 958,900,000 chickens, so almost 8 billion chickens are slaughtered every year, in the United States alone. So when you think about that number and when you think about the water needed, I don't even know what that number would be, but it seems like it would be a lot. And I got the number of chickens killed from animalkillclock.org, which is a live counter for how many animals are killed in the US. And right now we are at 15 trillion, almost 16 trillion animals killed, because they also count marine life. And while I was there, I saw a couple of other relevant statistics that they list on their website, one of which is that 26.2% of U.S. retail meat is discarded by stores and consumers, which is equal to 14 billion animals. So 14 billion animals are literally dying for no reason. And of course, us vegans know that all of them are dying for no reason. But wow, 14 billion of them are dying without their bodies even being used in any way. So, what the fuck? How is that supposed to be efficient? Oh my god. Let alone the fact that humans only eat select parts of the animal and throw away like so much of the animal, their organs, their heads, their legs, in most cases. So ridiculous. Hint, it's because humans are not actually apex predators or carnivores. Visit nutritionfacts.org and the American Dietetic Association's position statement on vegan diets for proof of that statement. So get a load of this other stat. The percent of U.S. land in 48 contiguous states used for livestock pastures / range is 33%. That's a lot. And the animal feed production is 8%. 8% doesn't seem like as high, right? Well, a lot of animal feed is actually being grown in Brazil, where they're knocking down the Amazon rainforest for cattle ranching, either literal cattle ranching with cows or to grow the feed for cattle. So, another thing to think about if you're not vegan. Watch Cowspiracy look into the facts behind how much Amazon rainforest deforestation is caused by animal agriculture. So I was pulling up the Cowspiracy fact sheet, which is where they have all the facts from the documentary with citations of the source they got them from. And I happened across a couple of facts about water use from cowspiracy.com. And one of them is that fracking water uses ranges from 70 to 140 billion gallons annually, as compared to animal agriculture water consumption ranges from 34 to 76 trillion gallons annually. Trillion. So it also says that agriculture is responsible for 80 to 90% of U.S. water consumption. Now, bear in mind, this just says agriculture, which includes all agriculture. But when you think about it, a vast majority of what they're talking about is going to livestock drinking it, as well as the crops grown to feed to livestock. I mean, if you live in the US, you know that if you drive across the country, it's mostly cornfields and soy fields, and it's not like this huge percentage of water is going to farms that are only growing vegan food. Growing feed crops for livestock consumes 56% of water in the US. That's just the crops to feed these animals. That's not even counting the water that they drink. Californians use 1,500 gallons of water per person per day. And keep that number in mind when we get to the water footprint discussion later. Close to half is associated with meat and dairy products. So that's not even getting into eggs. 2,500 gallons of water are needed to produce 1 pound of beef. So you might be thinking, I thought it was only 1,800 gallons of water per 1 pound of beef, which is still a fuck ton. But it says that the amount of water used to produce 1 pound of beef vary greatly. and that this number is from Dr. George Borgstrom, chairman of Food Science and Human Nutrition Department of College of Agriculture and Natural Resources, Michigan State University. It looks like it's from a study, Impacts on Demand for and Quality of Land and Water. So that's the number they used for Cowspiracy, but I think the most widely shared statistic for that is actually 1,800 gallons goes into 1 pound of beef. Waterfootprint.org says that of the water used in animal product production, 98% goes to produce feed for the animals. Now, this is really wild, but 1,000 gallons of water are required to produce 1 gallon of milk. And this is coming from the Cowspiracy fact sheet. It has a study cited for where they got that stat from. Certainly not hard to believe after I told you how much water dairy cows drink a day, which is about 30. 5% of water consumed in the U.S. is by private homes. 55% of water consumed in the U.S. is for animal agriculture. Now, this is crazy considering that we have places in our own country that don't have access to drinking water, but animal agriculture is responsible for 20 to 33% of all freshwater consumption in the world today. What? There's humans that can't even drink water. And by a smaller billion than the amount of cattle that are being given water. Like, how is it possible that there's roughly just under 2 billion humans that don't have fresh drinking water and or food, but we feed billions and billions of animals, of livestock, food and water? Trillions if you count marine life. Like that, 76 billion land animals alone, I believe, in the US, let alone the whole world, compared to less than 2 billion humans that need it. I know politics is involved, but really? You want to talk about how animals are not more important than humans, but then you want to give the water and food to animals over humans. What the fuck? So back into the amount of water that animals drink. So according to omafra.gov.on.ca, the amount of water that sheep drink in liters per day is 4.4 for feeder lambs and 10 liters per day for the lactating meat ewe plus the unweaned offspring. It might be useful here to remind you that humans only drink a half of a gallon every day, just about. And we can't seem to provide enough drinking water for all the humans in the world, of which there are, 9 billion humans in the world? Yet, again, there's 76 billion land animals in the US alone, not even including the whole planet. And apparently we have enough water to give all the animals 30 gallons a day, or even 10 gallons a day. What? So if the US is murdering 35, almost 36, we'll say 36 million cattle per year, and cattle drink 15 on the low end and 30 on the high end gallons of water every day, if I'm doing all of this math right, then that would be 540 million gallons of water that these animals drank all year before they were slaughtered, just in the last year, not even let alone their whole lives. And that's on the low end, and that's also not counting all the animals that are still growing to be that age that aren't being slaughtered in said year, such as the dairy cows that are around for about 6 years. And those are also the ones who drink the most water, who drink the 30 gallons of water. And that number of gallons, assuming that I did the math correctly, is 1,080,000,000. That's how much Like, if we were to assume all of the cattle slaughtered were dairy cows, which of course they aren't, but that's the higher end of the estimate, if that makes sense. So, of course, when looking at the water footprint, we have to consider how much food they're eating because the food requires water to be grown. So, according to thebeefsite.com, the daily food capacity for beef cows depends on whether or not the cow is lactating and depends on the type of forage. So here's going to be a chart. So for native range straw and stalks, the dry cow will eat 20 to 22 pounds. I believe that's per day. And the lactating cow will eat 22 to 24 pounds. So when it comes to native hay, biome grass hay, and alfalfa, the dry cow will eat 22 to 24 pounds, the lactating cow 25 to 28 pounds. For alfalfa, I can't read my own handwriting, something else hay, for dry cows it's 28 to 30 pounds, and for lactating it's 30 to 33 pounds, and for green pasture it's 28 to 30 pounds for dry and 30 to 33 pounds for lactating. And for silage, which is corn, it's 28 to 30 pounds for dry cows and 30 to 33 pounds for lactating cows. And I went ahead and looked up what silage was at the time of researching because I didn't know what it was, and it's not just corn, it's actually a mixture of corn and water. So out of the 28.5 pounds of silage, 18.5 pounds of that is water. So, yeah. And that's probably a really common way of feeding because it's the cheapest, because corn grows everywhere. So not only do you have to account the water that's growing the corn crop, but you have to account the water that's being added to the corn to make the silage. So when you learn about how their feed works, it makes a lot of sense, those stats that I read earlier about how much of the percentage of water goes toward the feed. And what do they feed pigs? Usually corn and soybeans. What do they feed chickens? Usually grain, protein supplements, soybean oil meal, mineral supply, and vitamin supply. And pigs will eat 6 to 8 pounds of food per day, while chickens eat a 1/4 pound of food per day, according to timbercreekfarmer.com. And to further correct/clarify what I said earlier about how many humans are without water, it's actually less than I thought. According to safedrinkingwater.org, it is 785 million, so not even 1 billion. So it's absolutely ridiculous that this amount of humans can't have water, but we can give billions upon billions of livestock water so that people can eat animal products in more privileged countries. It is so insane. I can't even believe it. Think about the people who don't even have drinking water in other parts of the world next time you want to have a fucking cheeseburger or a glass of milk. Ugh, it's so fucking insane. So this is what I have in my notes that echoes what I said earlier from a different source, but the worldwide meat and animal product consumption is responsible for 27% of humanity's total water footprint. That's a similar number to what I said earlier, and that's according to a study from Hoekstra, Arjen, Y, the hidden water resource use behind meat and dairy. So that is a study that comes from. And of that total, 98%, again, is due to the water required to produce the animal's feed, while water for drinking, cleaning, and feed mixing is only 1.1%, 0.89%, and 0.03% in that order. So even though I was just describing earlier like how much of a fuck ton of water needs to go into food mix, it's still nothing compared to the amount of water needed to grow the crops because, again, they need to eat pounds and pounds every single day of these crops. So that's kind of hard to wrap your head around how much more water goes into their actual food than what they actually drink a day, even though what they drink a day is still fucking insane. So beyond the amount of water they drink a day and taking into account all the other water used per day, including their feed, I wonder how you would configure the math of like what, say, a dairy cow's daily water footprint is, because we're going to talk about humans' daily water footprint here in a minute. It would be interesting to compare that. I think they said earlier that the average water footprint for a Californian is 1,500. And also in 2012, corn production was 25% of total U.S. irrigated acreage harvested, and hay and other forage was 18%. Of course, the vast majority of corn and all of hay is going to livestock, or most of hay. So according to foodprint.org, meat has a much higher footprint than veggies, grains, or beans. This website also says that American meat consumption is nearly 3 times the global average. Ugh, the fucking privilege. And the programming. I mean, all you have to do is ask yourself, are Americans the most healthy country? And you'll find, no, we're not. Not even at all. We're probably one of the most unhealthy countries. So perhaps this whole, consuming nearly 3 times the global average of meat might have something to do with that. Just maybe. And again, this is, I think, another source quoting this same number, but the worldwide consumption of meat and animal products makes up 20% of humanity's total water footprint. Imagine if the world went vegan and we could free up 27% of the world's fresh water. I mean, there would be no thirst. So, by the year 2030, experts predict that global demand for water will outstrip supply by 40%. And that's from watercalculator.org. I can't even wrap my brain around this. So in less than 10 years, our global demand for water is going to be 45% higher than the amount of water we have. What the fuck? So of that 40%, we can cut that more than half down and bring that number, 40%, all the way down to 13%, simply if the world was vegan. And then 13% wouldn't be so high of a number, and then we could do whatever else we needed to do to also cut it down. So, wow. And when that happens, when water becomes that over in demand, you're going to have violence over it, conflicts over it, and who knows what. So it's kind of fucking important that we care about this. So, what can we do? Well, there's a lot we can do to reduce our water footprint. Hint, the number one thing you can do is go vegan. Just like everything else. Surprise. But, so earlier, the California average water footprint was 2,500. Well, according to waterfootprint.org, the average just of all water footprint is 2,056.8 gallons. And that is per day. Now, if 1 single pound of beef is responsible for 1,800 of those gallons, imagine how much you could potentially bring your water footprint down, right? And that is just in the US. So, Keegan and I took the quiz at www.watercalculator.org, and Keegan's water print of gallons per day is 890, and my water print is 879 gallons per day. And they take into account everything from how you wash your car to if you water your grass or not, to random things. I'm trying to remember because it was a while ago. But yeah. So just looking at diet alone, what is the difference between what a person who's eating all the animal products and a vegan's diet of water footprint that they cause. I worded that really weird, but I hope you follow. So a study by the European Commission Joint Research Center found that a vegan diet uses 5 times less water than an animal products diet. And if I'm understanding this study correctly, this was actually just comparing diets that consume meat, pescatarian diets, and vegetarian diets. So potentially it's even higher than that, if I'm understanding it right. Or perhaps it is that the vegan diet uses 5 times less. I'm not really sure, but either way, good news. You can save so much water by going vegan. Do I need to convince you anymore? You can shave off your daily water footprint by over 1,000 gallons per day just by going vegan. Some of the other ways I can remember from Water Footprints quiz is that not shopping, like getting all your things used as much as possible, and not just like going on mindless, meaningless shopping sprees saves a ton of water. Not like watering your lawn obviously saves a ton of water. I always thought watering lawns was stupid anyway. Washing your car by hand instead of taking it into one of those places where you drive through. Not having a car. Using higher efficiency washing machines and dishwashers and things like that, etc., etc. I'm sure if you went to waterfootprint.org, they would have a list of things you can do. So there's a meme that goes around a lot that says, 1,800 gallons are required for 1 pound of beef. That's equivalent to 6 months of showers. Well, that is insane, but that also is assuming that the showers are really short. And so I took it upon myself to Google the average gallons used per shower, and it appears to be 17 gallons. So just for some simple math here, let's just say that instead of 1,800s for a pound of beef, it's 1,700. So that means if you take a shower every day at the average length of shower time, which I think is 8 minutes, and you use 17 gallons per day, then that would actually be 100 days of showers, which is how many months? Which is about 3 1/3 months, again, if I'm doing all the math correctly. And again, that is making the 1,800 down to 1,700. So, 100 days of showering is 1 pound of beef if you take a shower for the average amount of time. So that, I guess, could possibly be more accurate than the 6 months. It's still a long time. It's still 3 1/3 months of showers for 1 fucking pound of beef that you, I guess you don't eat 1 pound all at once, but yeah, wow. Doesn't a family with kids put about 1 pound of beef into their spaghetti for 1 meal? I mean, I'm not really sure. Fucking disgusting. I used to always be so angry when they would ruin perfectly good sauce with meat, because I never liked meat even when I still ate it. Another note that I did have written down here that's not really related to water is that antibiotics are routinely given to livestock, which is 70% of antibiotic use in the US, which obviously rises antibiotic resistance. Or antibiotic resistant bacteria, because if you don't know what antibiotic resistance is or what it means the bacteria evolve and grow to become more resistant to the antibiotics. So basically when you try to use the antibiotics, the bacteria have evolved to be immune to it. I mean, we find this happening. I used to take a bunch of antibiotics for acne back in the day when I didn't really know, and I didn't know how diet and de-stressing could help and all that shit, and I would take a pill like everyone else in America is told to do. Well, after a couple years, the pill didn't work anymore and my acne came back. That's a good example of antibiotic resistance. The more we give these antibiotics to these animals, 70%, that means these bacteria are just getting more and more and more and more resistant, because they give it to them like it's fucking candy or, I don't know, like water. Of course, they really have no choice if they want to keep their animals alive in the filthy, feces-filled thousands of birds in a shed on top of each other, pigs in farrowing crates on top of each other, cattle sitting in shit on slaughter trucks. Like, that's the reality. So these animals would all be just like dying before they get to the slaughterhouse if they weren't being pumped full of antibiotics. So if that's true, then how can some companies, like chicken companies, for example, claim that they don't use any antibiotics? Like, how is that even possible? I feel like that's probably just a straight up lie. Maybe I'll look into antibiotics for their own episode. But yeah, random unrelated fact. So that pretty much concludes the episode today. Single biggest thing you can do for water footprint as well as for climate change and to not pay for murder and cruelty and mass slaughter is to go vegan. And if you are new to veganism, please watch Earthling Ed's YouTube channel, listen to his TEDx talk. It's less than 20 minutes long, I'm pretty sure. It's called Every Argument Against Veganism. And I have a YouTube channel. It's called Alicia Demi, ALISIA space DEMI. I have the Stop the Violence podcast on that YouTube channel, but it's a bit behind in uploading because it takes a bit longer to upload to YouTube, and I started it way after, so episodes are more up to date on Spotify, Apple, and Anchor. If you are on social media, which I of course advocate for people to not be on social media or to go on there very rarely, but if you are on there already, follow Stop the Violence podcast on Instagram. I will post episode previews that are about 2 minutes long, so you can go on there and see like, oh, do I want to listen to this episode or not, and see how you feel about the preview, as well as to remind you of episodes coming out. Please do make sure you are following the podcast wherever you are listening to it. And if you do listen to it on like Apple, you can leave it a review on there. That would be really great. On my YouTube channel, I make lifestyle types of vlogs, which includes such topics as, of course, veganism, being a vegan activist, the daily life of a vegan activist, meditation, yoga, drawing, art, music, guitar playing, healthy habits, a no phone lifestyle, more towards minimalism, how to be happy, how to deal with ADHD and depression, all that sort of stuff. And for reasons I told in the previous Stop the Violence episode on how to be happy as a vegan, I really don't read comments and I don't answer comments a vast majority of the time. So if you have a burning question, a request, or a comment, you can message it to the Stop the Violence Instagram account, but please know that it could take at least a week or even more for me to see it because I really have strict boundaries with social media. And yeah, Black lives still matter. Black lives always matter. Let's be consistently against all oppression. Consistent anti-oppression. It's all interlinked. Check out Vegan Activist Alliance for what consistent anti-oppression looks like. And I hope you have a beautiful day. And yeah. Okay, bye.